Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live, and we are so privileged on a beautiful Monday to welcome a seasoned educator. We are so privileged to welcome Lindi Bell, who is the principal at a Small World School in Reggio-Inspired Park. Now, today's conversation is going to be pretty interesting, and we might be introducing you to an education style or a style of learning that you may not be aware of just as yet. But do stay tuned for our conversation this evening. We are going to be talking more about the Reggio-Inspired preschool that celebrates inner creativity, celebrates the curiosity that our little ones do have, and absolutely enhances that curiosity in the best way possible. So do stay tuned for our exciting and exhilarating conversation. Lindi, thank you so much for joining us on Prime Live.
Pleasure. It's lovely to be here.
I mean, this sounds incredibly interesting, and I'm super excited to get into it because I love the idea of a schooling system that almost enhances or celebrates that curiosity that our little ones do have. And you know them with their hundreds of questions. We want to, of course, keep them curious and keep them interested. And I remember a teacher of mine in school used to say that if you can stay with your young ones as long as possible when they're very young, or put them in an environment that really, caters to that curiosity, they're like sponges at that age. But let's start off our conversation by talking more about the Reggio education system. Now, it's meant to emphasize creativity and inquiry-based learning as well. Talk to us more about what it's all about, because some of our viewers at home may not have heard of it before.
You've hit on my favorite topic of all time. How much time have you got? I'm kidding, but to have an inquiry-based curriculum in a school is to work with the child. It's to go with how children learn. Children learn because they are human. And they have an internal drive and a motivation to answer some of life's biggest questions. So to have a curriculum that isn't sort of top down, gridded down onto that natural curiosity of children is to support the learning capacities of the children. When children get to come to school and answer their own burning questions, together with facilitators, people who are experts in the game, that's really what education is.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I love your approach to education is to enhance that curiosity and excitement that is already there, instead of slapping them down with an education system that is pre-planned and, kind of very stern and very formal and very strict. I love that. But can you talk to us more about the kind of materials that are used in the classroom with this kind of learning form or learning style?
Yes. Somebody said, I think it was Bev Bosch, she said, if it hasn't been in the hands, it cannot be in the brain. And so children need access to a wide variety of materials. Too often you find a child sitting at a desk in front of a worksheet, only a limited amount of pens or pencils, and that's what is seen as learning, so predominant in our schools today. We have materials, of course, all the perceptual games, educational toys, some Montessori type materials as well, but also access to open-ended, what we call loose parts. So often resourced from industrial waste. We have a project called Matafa, which is sourcing industrial waste from different industries like wooden blocks or fabric samples or beautiful reams of wallpaper. And children, in the hands of children, materials work together with the children to help them to be creative and to create new ideas. It's very important for children to have a broad range of stimulating, inspiring materials. Also, we have things such as technology, which you could see is also like a material for children. That old-fashioned overhead projector that we remember, maybe you don't, but I remember from my school. A digital microscope, materials that are from, you could say, technology, but actually that children also have access to, are very important for children to have.
No, that's incredibly interesting. We talk about how these little ones of these generations are very digitally inclined. So I love that the program kind of caters to that kind of digital baby that's in them. And you see the young ones naturally being drawn to, things that are more digital, that are more technologically advanced, which is really interesting. And I love that you talked about this very hands-on concept, because we've had a few guests on the show talk about how, when it comes to early childhood development, how important learning through play is and how important that is for their future development as well. But I want to talk more about the Reggio education system. Now, it stresses the importance of that very hands-on type of learning. Can you talk to us about how your school is able to implement this kind of learning process with this hands-on approach? I know you've talked to us about some of the incredible materials that are on offer, but maybe there's a parent out there, who is very keen and curious on, having their child be part of this kind of system. Can you talk to us more about what that looks like in a classroom?
Yes. Well, whether it's planting food in our edible garden or learning to cook in our in-house kitchen, we have a full art atelier with a full-time art teacher. So whether it's making pottery, sculptures, making your idea of how the solar system works, in our STEM atelier, these are all very important places where children can access materials hands-on with their hands, so that they're able to think with stuff. You could say they think with materials, and that gives them a very experiential knowledge that becomes part of who they are, and they can apply that across any other situation, whether at school or at home or wherever.
Now, you have over 2 decades of experience within the learning space and within education. Now, I'm sure you can tell from your experience the difference that it makes to have this kind of approach to education, as opposed to the one we're used to, the normal academic structure that you would find in preschools. What do you find are some of the biggest impacts, or positive impacts rather, that you've seen with early childhood development and early childhood development learning, the difference you have seen with this kind of approach, the Reggio approach, as well as comparatively to our traditional one?
Small World has been going for 15 years, and in that time I've seen children's capacities and intelligences absolutely unlock. In Reggio approach, there's this beautiful poem that was written by Loris Malaguzzi, who's the founder of the Reggio approach many, many years ago. And he says that the child has 100 languages and 100 more. But the school and the culture steal 99 of those languages, and they separate the head from the body. They separate science from imagination, reality from fantasy. What I've seen as we've grown in this approach and learnt ourselves how to do Reggio in the South African school is that children leave us switched on. They are 100% intelligent. They not only know how to read, write, perhaps, but also know how to be a great friend. They know how to sing. They know how to sculpt, to draw their ideas onto paper. And so we are not robbing the children of those 100 languages. Unfortunately, though, they go into a primary school, which is predominantly reading, writing, and arithmetic, the 3 R's. And, that is a bottling up of those 100 intelligences, 100 ways of thinking for us. So, yes.
I really love the way you talk about education and the way you talk about how we should be fostering this love for education within children. And I smiled a lot when you were talking, because I relate so much to what you're saying. I think about, that huge jump from preschool to, the big school, as they used to say back then. And it robs you of so much of that joy and excitement for learning that you once had when you were in preschool. Because I remember, when you're talking about working with your hands and pottery and clay and those kind of things, I felt so much more in my element. It teaches you to feel so confident within yourself, your own creativity, to trust your own instincts, and teaches you to build those instincts as well. And when you get to big school, it becomes super serious and you forget all those exciting things that you loved about learning. And that's when you start to find that the kids are not wanting to go to school anymore. And that excitement of joy of going to school is very, very lost in that sense. So I love your approach to learning, and I really wish we could implement more of that all the way through to high school, because learning should be something that is fun and exciting. And that's what I want to ask you about in my next question. We might have a lot of young parents out there who, maybe have just had their first child or are looking into the option of getting into schools. How do they then, what is your advice then to allow them to create and foster this kind of environment for their child where they love learning? They still are super curious and super excited about the opportunity of learning.
This is the great gift of children, is they are naturally wired to learn through wonder and through awe. It's actually a brain state, the state of awe. And when children learn in that way, it naturally becomes part of their development. You know, scientists have recently done studies where they're trying to figure out how it is that synapses are formed in the brain. How do we actually learn? And they discovered that it takes 400 repetitions to grow a new synapse. In other words, to learn a concept, a new skill, and so on, unless it's done in play, in which case it takes 10 to 20 repetitions. That's it. So we can see that children lead the way in learning. And the great gift that children offer to parents, new parents, is that they can partner with their children in this journey, this adventure of lifelong learning. They can wonder alongside with the child. You know, when a child says, "Why is the sky blue?" they are not asking for a definition or an answer. They're asking for your collaboration. They're asking for you to partner with them, to wonder alongside them. Why is the sky blue? You know, and it could be, of course, the science reason, or it could be, well, because that's the Earth's favorite color. To see the world through glittering eyes is to see it anew. And that is what children offer to parents as well.
Oh, that's so beautifully said. And I think, you know, I love to see the passion that you have for education. And I can see that and I can feel that when you speak. And I love to see, you know, people like you who are passionate about giving back to the education system, offering an alternative option to what is, you know, predominantly traditional in preschools and in early childhood development. I think it's so important to be offering this kind of thing. And you talk about how you remember and you learn quicker when you're doing something with your hands. And I think about all those little science experiments we used to do in school. Those you'll never forget. But the things you learned in theory that were written on paper, just on blank paper, you'll never remember them again. But those experiments, those pottery classes, those kind of things that you did when you were younger, you never ever forget them, which is absolutely astonishing to learn. But in closing, I wanted to ask you, you know, there are a lot of viewers at home who will want to know, how do we get more involved? How do we find out more information about Small World School? Should they want to enroll their children? How do we get in touch with you?
Well, thank you also for that opportunity. I appreciate that so much. Small World School is in Roosevelt Park, right behind the Roosevelt Park Masjid, and bordering on the Emmerensha Botanical Gardens. So we're there. We're also online, smallworldschool.coza. But if you really want to see a sort of inside view of what happens in a day at Small World, you can find us on Instagram, and that's a beautiful account called Small World School as well. So that'll be how to find us. Thank you.
Lindi, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you for sharing your passion for education, for opening up our minds to what the possibilities are within education and what is possible. And thank you also for sharing your advice with parents who might be watching this evening. You know, I think it's so important, you know, as a seasoned educator, for parents to have this kind of advice is invaluable. So thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Viewers at home, that is Lindi from a Small World School based in Roosevelt Park. If anything about our conversation today excited you, if you're a young parent and you want to find out more about the incredible education system that your kid will have the opportunity to explore and be excited about, the kind of environment that nurtures that sense of curiosity and creativity, please do reach out to them on their social media platforms. They'd be happy to help. But do also share your thoughts with us on our social media platforms. And if you have any questions for Lindi, please do also share them on our platforms as well. But on that note, it is time for us to head over to an ad break, and we'll come right back.